Hi guys, welcome back to Two Worlds Collide podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Agent X, an elite investigator who played a key role in tracking down one of Australia's most notorious conman, Peter Foster. For months, Foster managed to stay ahead of authorities, changing identities, dodging surveillance, and slipping through the cracks. But Agent X was relentless, building a precise pattern of life and executing the operation that finally led to his arrest in Port Douglas. This isn't just a story about catching a conman. It's an inside look at surveillance, tracking fugitives, undercover work, and what it takes to bring criminals to justice. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, you ready to go?
Sure am.
This is a bit different now. So Agent X, welcome to Two Worlds Collide podcast. How you going?
Thanks for having me on, Sam.
No, you're very welcome. Look, obviously, during your life, you've had to live in and outside different personalities, which we will get to, which is going to be a main part of the podcast because I want to know how you jump from one life to another, doing some private investigator work and also some undercover work, which is, to me, really, really fascinating. And it's a part of the podcast and a part of this podcast journey where I want to go down as well and find out these crazy things about people's lives that are so far outside the normal that it's hard to comprehend for the human mind. So this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. But look, let's just start off how you got into that field, and we need to rewind a bit to your policing career. So why don't you start off with telling me why you joined the police force, and then we'll roll on to your private investigator stuff and then your undercover stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. Have to say I'm slightly, I've never spoken in public about this, so we'll let this roll, see how we go.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Absolutely.
So yeah, just jump on and tell me why you joined the police force.
So, I grew up on a dairy farm and, was homeschooled actually, and didn't really have any direction in life. And then when I was in late teens, I became a bit of a troubled teenager and lived a bit of a life that probably wasn't real healthy. And as it happened, a friend of mine shared that he'd joined the police force, and for whatever random reason, I thought that would be the way to go. So in terms of having much reason to do it, it wasn't really a direction. I was into horses, and I still didn't actually think I would join the mounted police or anything. It was just I wanted to join the police for something to do. So I was early 20s when I joined, and went down to the academy and did my 6 months and got spat out the other end and wondered what the heck I was actually in for from there.
Yeah, okay. So how many years did you spend in the police force?
Spent 13 years in the police force.
Yeah. Any significant jobs that you can recall or remember that sort of shaped who you became as a police officer?
Yeah, definitely. I started off in Hindley Street actually, which was fairly busy in fact, I started off on a night shift summer where it was quite busy, got straight thrown into the typical fights in Hindley Street, and then went country after only a year after that. And one significant job that I remember, I arrested with my offsider. We arrested this 17-year-old for he'd made a mess of his mum and dad's house and broken a lot of things, and took him down to the hospital. And anyway, my partner went off to have lunch and he started getting quite restless and fighting. So he put him to sleep with a little bit of an injection, as they do, just a bit of a sedative. And he woke up quite angry. And he said he needed to go to the toilet, and he was handcuffed to the bed at that time. And I said to the nurse, look, I have a feeling he's going to try to do a runner, so just be aware of that. So we went into the toilet, and when he came out, he of course tried to do a runner, and me being the type of person I wasn't going to let someone beat me, I grabbed him, and quite a bad fight went from there, and I got beaten quite badly to the head repeatedly, and the nurse was screaming and she obviously couldn't help. And I did manage to get him cuffed again and back at where we needed him, but the sergeant that came up to assist that got called, he said, are you all right? And I said, no, I'm fine, I'm no problem. He said, go and have a look in the mirror. And I went and had a look, and my whole shirt was unbuttoned and ripped, and all my hair was out, and I had blood coming out my nose. And anyway, within about 30 minutes I was completely out cold for 8 hours. So what I do remember about that is they said, we need to ring a family, we think she's got bleeding to the brain and we don't know what's going to happen. So I was out cold for 8 hours, and as a result of that had quite bad broken teeth and a few injuries when it came to hearing, a few things after that. So that was a fairly significant start to my career.
Yeah, right. What, in the first couple of years?
Yeah, first couple of years. I was young 20s then.
Did you ever hesitate after that?
No, definitely not.
No.
No, I think that just made me more excited to get out on the job. I don't know why.
Yeah, okay. Did that type of stuff about the job excite you, with like in some weird sense?
Yeah, it did. I think I enjoyed one was the unknown, with jobs. That's what I did love about the police force.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know. It didn't put me off. I liked the excitement of getting out there, and if there was a genuine fight, I was happy to get in there. Not that, of course, I started fights and did things we shouldn't, but I was more than happy to get in there and do what we needed to do.
Yeah, I talk about this with a lot of military guys as well, and we say this all the time. And I say it as well. If we had the chance to go back to Afghanistan and do what we did again, a lot of us would go back, because I don't know. There's something about it. It's like the thrill of it, right? It's really hard to explain for people that haven't been there. Like, you're in a war zone. Potentially could get shot. Potentially could step on IEDs and die. But there's something about it that's to like my younger self as well was just so intriguing, and it was. Parts of it were enjoyable. Like I would sit here with mates and talk about times where, we had like indirect rocket launchers get launched onto our base, and we would see it as fun.
Yeah.
Like you could hear it. You could hear it coming in, and you hear it thump down, and everyone's like your adrenaline's up, and there's something about it that was fun. Or I had a friend in here talk about they were sleeping outside the wire one night on a hill, and they got hit by a bunch of rocket launchers, RPGs, and small arms fires, and he just loved it.
Absolutely.
And, there was a part there where we spent 3 or 4 weeks like sleeping by the green zone, and there's just no real protection, and there's a part of it that I really enjoyed it. So I can definitely relate to that sort of thrill of the job. That's probably what you're trying to say, and like
definitely
the thrill of living on the edge like that.
Yeah,
really
no fear.
Yeah.
I think, when you've got that no fear, there's something that really stimulates inside, that you just go, come on, bring something else on that brings some excitement. It's that, some people are fight, some people are flight, and obviously we know which category we come into.
Yeah. So given what we've just spoke about, when you moved into, when you moved into PI and undercover work specifically, is that the type of stuff that really kept you in that environment, is like the thrill of the job?
As in, once I got into investigations?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess just to cover off on the difference with, some people don't really know what private investigators do, so I might cover off on that.
Yeah.
So there's sort of two main sections of private investigating, and that's factual or surveillance. So factual work is just simply a lot from desktop, where you're taking reports and statements, and it's all online, or you go to people's houses. So that's one side. And then surveillance can be anything from, typically people think of as a PI is someone who's actually following a cheating husband. That's what I get all the time. But to be honest, that's a very small portion of what PIs really do.
Yeah.
So surveillance and undercover comes, so when I say UC, undercover, that comes in within the surveillance component of that. So that's what I mostly have done throughout my career, and that's what I prefer to do. But certainly what is exciting about that is you don't know what someone's going to do on any day. So if you've got a target, and we're just talking about something simple as following someone on a work cover matter, you don't know what they're going to do. You don't know if you're going to be following them for 400 Ks that day, or if you're going to go down the beach, or where you're going to go that day. So there's always that excitement, and believe me, there's plenty of downtime that's not excitement, where you're sitting in the car for hours on end. But certainly it's that unknown and doing all the things you don't know that you're going to do with that target.
Yeah. You were just saying then, a lot of it is just sitting downtime. Now, when I was overseas in Afghan, it was like 2% of the time or 5% of the time was actually, we're on the job. The rest of it was, you're sitting around going to the gym or just doing real boring patrols and stuff like that. Is that very similar to your line of work?
Yeah, definitely. There was times that sometimes you're on 14 hours, 7 days a week, and you might be waiting for that whole week for someone just to walk out the door. And the thing is, you can't take your eye off the door, because the moment you do, guarantee that's when they're going to come out, and they'll be out the driveway, and you see a car going up the road, and suddenly you're questioning yourself. You've been sitting there for 4 days and not seen anything, and you think, oh, did I just miss them? Yeah, it's that you don't want to take your eye off it, but definitely there is so much sitting around and waiting. It's not all the glamour it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So let's talk about some of the smaller jobs that you've done, and then let's work on to the progression of some of the bigger jobs. And there's a couple of notorious ones that have been in the news as well that I want to dive into. That is really important to this podcast, and it's really going to be fascinating for the listeners. But like I said, let's jump into some smaller jobs first. You know, like your normal cheating husband or your cheating wife and stuff like that. Like, do you get those type of jobs, or like your work cover jobs, and someone's trying to, you know, take a company for a ride and they're not really injured? And so, like, do those jobs sort of exist?
Yeah, absolutely. The variance of the amount of different types of work we do is, you know, I sometimes stop and think, what on earth have I actually done in, you know, over all those years? And I can't even remember, you know, a majority of them because they're so different. I remember one of the jobs that I did was a lady who, she was on a work cover matter. Actually, I've got to scrap this one.
Oh, you can't say that?
I can't say that one, no.
No, that's all right.
No, we'll come back to another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes those are going to come up. Apologies from that one.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, there's going to be plenty others now. I have to stop and think for a second because I'm caught on that line.
No, that's fine.
Plenty of work cover ones. I mean, they are the lower end that you do plenty of, and they're always interesting in the fact that the person might be claiming, for example, they've got a really bad back injury and they can't even lift 5 kilos and they can't leave the house, and next minute you follow them and they go to a medical and they're on a walking stick and they slowly go in and they're playing the whole game, and so you get all this footage, and then once they leave there, they of course are on their walking stick again and leave.
And then they're straight out to the gym.
Yeah, 20 minutes later you're off doing all sorts of things. You're down at Bow Repairs throwing tyres in the back of the ute and going home and doing engines and all those things. I mean, that happened a fair bit.
Yeah, I must say, I used to work for, when I first got out of the military, I worked for a business, and I won't mention the business, but they used to have a lot of workers come through. I'll say it was a chicken factory, and quite a big chicken factory. So they used to get a lot of Indian, Chinese, and Australian workers come through as well. But it was quite a low pay. So, funnily enough, and it used to be, so there used to be a lot of injuries there, but a lot of people used to get lower back injuries because picking up crates and stuff like that. And now that I think about it, they actually did hire some private investigators to get people that were saying they had back injuries, but they didn't really have them.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
And it was through work cover as well. So
yeah, sometimes I'm trying to get the footage is another bit of a fun part. You know, some people may be really savvy and go, I'm aware that there may be agents on me and getting surveillance, you know, on me, so they're really careful. I remember this one guy, it was a work cover matter, and he was trying to be really careful once he left the house to do nothing, and he was meant to have, you know, pretty much no capacity, and he was working in his driveway on an engine, but it was really hard to sit because he had high fences, so you couldn't just sit out on the road with the camera down. So my friend and I, actually another agent obviously, set up at the end of the road, and we actually made it look like the car had broken down, and I was in the front having this big carry-on make it look like I was on the phone and trying to get this sorted for about an hour while she was in the back taking all this footage of him in the driveway. So it's about getting a little bit creative in the way that you find how to take footage of things.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you've got to think outside the box as well. On those smaller jobs, have you ever thought that potentially you've been, you know, caught?
Yeah, the thing is, you almost become a bit paranoid, really. Sometimes you're thinking, oh, have they seen me or have they not seen me? And I know, especially when you're doing a follow, so in a shop where you're really close, you sometimes think, well, for how long can I not be noticed? And sometimes people are just literally looking at you because they're taking notice of you, and you've got to have that awareness. Have I been burnt? Is it time to pull off? Or are they just looking around? And you've really got to know. It's pretty obvious when you're following in cars to know when someone is onto you, or whether you're just being paranoid, which and just on that topic, I find it funny, you know, some listeners might think you're giving away some tips, but believe me, everyone can run but they can't hide.
Yeah. Well, coming from you, I mean, it's just ultra interesting to hear this stuff because like I said, I know some dudes in the military that have went on to quite high levels of intelligence and stuff like that within the military, and I catch up with them for coffees and stuff like that, but they never really give away too much They really kept everything close to their hands. And I know some other guys that have went on to some other things as well, which I won't mention on the podcast, which is really, really interesting stuff. And then I also have some friends of friends that have went into the world of liberating kids in the child trafficking industry.
Yeah.
I've tried to get them onto the podcast, and they have just instantly said no, because in no way, shape or form can their identity be put out there, especially on social media. If I have these shorts that get 100,000 views, some get half a million on TikTok. And the people that are trafficking these kids, they're like high paranoia people as well. They're, drug smugglers, drug cartels. They're really, really paranoid people that are always watching their back. So obviously they're doing their due diligence on the people they're working with as well, which are these undercover guys that are working in the area. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. I find that world so fascinating. There's so much you have to, well, you would know, there's just so much you have to sacrifice as well. Given, what you have to do and where you have to put yourself, especially in the undercover roles now, which I sort of want to get at you now with a few of those roles. Now, I know times, places, and certain situations can't be named.
Yeah.
So we'll just keep the topic very, very brief, as in we won't mention any of that. But I want to find out the mental toll it takes from sometimes having to live that like double life of you being undercover, getting in with the crew, finding out information, and having to go home in the afternoon and be the person that you normally are.
Yeah.
So what type of toll does that take on you mentally?
Yeah, look, it definitely does, and you've really got to have a pretty clear mind before you go into a job, and each specific job, because obviously each job has its own risks and things that go with that. But I like to really sit on it. Is it worth this risk, and what's the mental toll this could potentially have on me, and not just me, but family around me and people who know me, and a location that I might be working out of. So there's always a really big consideration, and for me it's certainly, some jobs pay absolutely huge money, but that can never be a consideration. It's always got to be, what's the risk in it for me, and am I going to be able to deliver for the client what they actually want? That's really important. And then moving forward into how I really deal with that depends on the job itself. So sometimes it really does come to, as soon as I've finished, say on an undercover role with someone at the end of that evening, is literally just, whether it's going down the beach or doing meditation or trying to take myself out of that persona, because I really have to get myself into it. It's like acting, really, and I have to then get out of it and sometimes tell myself I'm not that person that I was in there. If I'm having to tell lies and things to get a story going, I've got to really remind myself that's not me. I'm doing this for a reason. So it's about having a really clear mind about the intent and what it's going to be able to give my client and for what reason.
Yeah. Have you ever thought have you ever had situations where you thought you're way too in over your head here?
They're the ones I like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, I guess, wrapping on what you said about
like the thrill of it. They're the ones that you enjoy.
Oh, absolutely.
So the more closer to the edge it is, the better the job it is for you.
Absolutely.
Does it really come down to money at all, or does it come
down
to...
No, not at all. No, I mean, one of the jobs that was probably one of my most dangerous jobs, I was trying to convince my client to pay me half of what it was, just because it wasn't a thing for me. At the time, it was, really quite a hectic job. And when I came back from it, I started getting withdrawals, just going, I need another hit of this adrenaline. And when I was back in the normal work-life balance of just back home and away from where I was on this job, I started looking at everyone else like they were weird and boring, and someone had to pull me up on it. Someone actually who's ex-military, is a very close friend of mine who understands the whole PTSD and adrenaline type work. He really pulled me up on it, and he said, "You're the one that's actually got the problem. Everyone else is normal. They're not boring. They're just normal." So I think you get really hooked on that adrenaline.
And has there ever been a point where you got caught up in that world where so the person that you're playing, have you thought that's actually you?
Say that again?
Yeah. So have you ever been caught up in that world where the role or character that you're playing, have you ever really truly thought that's you?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, I guess I'm so in it that I think it's me every time anyway.
Yeah.
And which is what I love when I'm given a UC role, is that for the most part I'm given, okay, here's what the intent is, here's the job that we're wanting done, and now you come up with all of the plan that goes with that. So I get to be whoever I want for the most part. I come up with everything. So I get to create all these people that I never actually would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, my mind just starts ticking over, right, and just starts thinking about all these weird situations, the scenarios that you could possibly be put in.
I remember once that I got called Sparrow, which was from that movie Red Sparrow, and the people I was working with, the other guys, they were calling me Sparrow, and just because I really wanted to be a smart ass, I went and got a dress and it had a red sparrow on it, and I wore that when I was going there in with someone, just because I really wanted, so that they could see that, just to make a bit of a joke about the fact that I was Sparrow.
Yeah. What's the longest bit of time that you've spent in undercover?
Yeah, so on one job itself, on just one running job, it was over 3 years, which was really, really heavy.
Wow. 3 years.
Yeah, that's a lot of lives to remember.
Yeah, and it's a long time. It's a long portion of your life as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Over that time, I sort of look at how much and things that had changed, and yeah, I was still going in circles on this same lie with this. It sort of felt like it was held in time, that job, even though it went for so long. That part of my life and that person that I was froze in time. I don't know how to explain that. The rest of life went on, and that just seemed to go in circles in that time. And then suddenly I realised I have been on this job for a long time, and it got to a point where I knew it was taking a toll and I had to exit out.
Yeah. Was there ever any points during that? Because obviously if you're in an undercover spot for that long, playing a different person, like I know if I walk around for 3 years in any major city around Australia, I'm bound to run into someone. Probably me more than so. Like, you know, some of my friends from Adelaide might not, because they don't have friends like I do all over the country. But if I were to walk around in other like major cities for a long time, I'd definitely run into someone. So taking that in mind, did you ever worry about running into someone like that you knew that could blow the cover?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I try and, I know this sounds a bit cliche, but I really try and rely on my gut intuition, because it has saved me that many times. And I've had 2 main incidents on 2 different UC jobs, and one was I was about to go and meet my target at a certain restaurant, and I was interstate, and I just jumped on a page and I saw that someone who had met in another state like years ago was actually at that restaurant. So I sent her a message and I said, look, you're about to see me at this restaurant with a male. Please do not come up to me and don't say my name. And the funny thing was, she said to me, that's okay, I've got other friends in that industry too.
She thought you were an escort.
She sure did.
Yeah.
But well, I'll let her think that. But at least it saved that moment.
Yep. So what about, moving on to some of those more notorious jobs, right, that may be in the paper. And then in particular, they call him the King Conman, Peter Foster. Now, there's an article on, I think it's like news.com, where they refer to you as Agent X. Yeah. So you obviously got the job to go up there and do, now it wasn't undercover, it was more PI work, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, yep. So just to get surveillance and footage. So did you just want to explain that job to me, because this is the ones that you can talk about in particular. So I just want you to rewind all the way back. So when you first got the job, the information you got, and then how you ran it all through.
Yeah, and you're right, this job can be spoken about because it is so public, which is a great one that we can talk about. The only thing that is an unknown was who was Agent X that sat on the job and got all the intel for over a couple of months and took all the footage. So
that was you.
That was me.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So I'd got a call from Ken Gamble. He's from IFW Global. He does a lot of fraud, more so overseas, and has quite a history with Peter Foster. In fact, Peter Foster had a hit out on him at some point. So I got a call from Ken just saying, hey, look, he's on the run and he's living up it's somewhere between Cairns and Port Douglas, and looks like he's trying to buy a really big boat up there and then jump on that with a heap of crew and get out of Australia.
Yeah,
So
I was reading he was potentially wanting to go to Vanuatu or Fiji.
That's it. Yeah, that's the one on this big beautiful vessel called the Achilles 3, which was for sale at that particular point. So Ken said, look, if you want to go up there, I'll give you 3 days, and it's like a needle in a haystack. See if you can find him, and we'll go from there. So I had no idea who Peter Foster was, so he gave me the briefing and sent me the information on the plane up there. I started reading, thought, oh wow, this guy's actually quite the con man, so I'm not going to let you beat me.
It was. I was reading up about him. He'd done certain cons for weight loss, like this perfume stuff as well. Tony Blair, he's the Prime Minister of England. His wife, he sold him like houses that he sold her houses that didn't exist or something like that.
Oh, he's an amazing con man. I tell you what,
sports betting as well, everything. Yeah. So there's millions and millions of dollars that he's conned people all around the world. So I was reading up on him today, and he obviously got the gift of the gab.
Yeah. In fact, there was a podcast that was done just before, or probably 6 months before this arrest, I'm not exactly sure, and it was talking about that he was doing another fraud, and which was actually this one that we're referring to, and it was the end part of that was saying that they were looking at hoping that they could bag him again, and so this, I guess, is now the carry on from there. So sports bet, so he had a scam going, and he actually was getting people overseas to sign up, and they were putting in hundreds of thousands, if not millions each, to do this, what they thought they were making all this money and beating the system. And Peter was up there under another name, his car wasn't under his name, so everywhere he went, it was very hard to find, because of course he didn't leave his name anywhere, and all his accommodation that he was staying at, he was going under a different, using actually one of his friends' names, which he'd done a few times. So getting up there was really interesting, because of course trying to get some intel from the locals, you can't just go in there and say I'm looking for Peter Foster, because you don't know who he's paying off. So I went around, and for the first 2 days I was just very careful about all the questions that I was asking. But what happens is, if you ask enough people enough information under the right way, you start putting little tiny pieces of the puzzle, and each person doesn't actually know who you are or what you're actually doing. So how it happened is, I got some intel that he was potentially walked along this beach. He keeps to himself. He's got 2 little dogs, as you'll see in all the footage. And someone said, I think he walks on the beach, on this particular 4-mile beach, every morning. So I rocked up nice and early this one morning, right where I thought that they had said he would be. And I was sitting there, and I got quite a good camera, as I would have. And I was just playing around with it, and I was on the phone to someone, and I had it zoomed in. It was probably a good K or more up the beach. I was just using someone up the beach to zoom in on. And then when I realised it was actually Peter Foster, and I was when I was talking to the person, I'm like, fuck, it's Peter Foster, I gotta go. I was pretty rapt. So from that point, it all rolled on from there. So
when you went around and started gathering information from people, what was some of the small, like, little questions that you asked people? Because you said before, you can't just say, hey, do you know this Peter Foster guy? Because one, he could be paying people off, or two, that's not his name, so no one will really know anyway. So, like, is it like, hey, do you see, because like, you might know that he had dogs, so like, I'm just looking for my uncle up here, he bailed on someone back home. Do you know, like, do you play that type of card, or is there other cards you play that? Yeah, you pretty much come up with whatever your storyline is going to be as to the information you're trying to get. So say if a question might have been at a real estate agent, because I knew he was looking for somewhere to live. So I went around to quite a few real estate agents, both privately and on Airbnb, just asking questions about, a friend has been trying to get something, and it's got a couple of little dogs, he's having trouble, and the conversation just goes from there. So I never use names or anything like that. Yeah, right. And that's sort of how you gathered enough intel to nab him, was it? Yeah, just to find him, to find the area that he might have been. Yeah. And then I was able to ask more people that I knew were locals in that area that may have seen him, and it just went from there. But I don't stop. I just ask questions. I just keep talking to people and talking until I can find what it is that I need. Yeah. Does anyone ever get suspicious of you walking around asking people questions?
Oh, I guess they don't know. I mean, you do it in a way. It seems like a conversation that you're having a general conversation, and you just loop that in. So I certainly don't go up and just ask that one question,
Yeah.
and I don't have them see me asking other people the same question or talking to people. So that's just one of those little tools you have in your kit bag that you use.
Yeah.
In the way that you ask things.
Yeah. So how did you find out how to do this stuff? Like,
I'm not actually sure.
yeah, because that's the other thing as well. Like you obviously can't be. It's not something. Like it obviously comes natural to you, right? And I'm assuming there isn't like a crash course in how to become an undercover person, unless you actually do it.
Yeah.
For the government and that sort of stuff. And if you do it for the government, you're probably wrapped in there for life. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
With that type of work.
Yeah.
So being a private one. Was there do you have any mentors or anything that worked you through this? Like,
no, I didn't. And I think it's one of those things that if I'm really honest about how I feel I got into it, is I'd had a few things happen, which we won't go into today, but growing up, I went through a few things that, weren't exactly great experiences, but looking back on them, I realise I have got an amazing gut intelligence, and if I learn to listen to that, the information that I get from that, and just knowing who to speak to and what to say and how to really read people. Some people just are hopeless at reading people, but reading what is it that someone wants to talk to me about, what am I gauging here, are they going to engage with me, is this going to look natural? So it's really about having a really good intuition and reading people, and I think that is something I definitely was blessed to get out of a very bad experience. It was something that I got from that.
yeah, and then you just took it and ran with it from there.
Yeah. In fact, just on what you were saying about, working for the government, I did actually get asked at some point and tried to get recruited to become a spy. And that was something I really considered. So I thought this would be just down my line, but I had to consider family at that time and knew I'd be picking me over them, and it just wasn't the right thing to do, because I essentially would have been happy to die doing the job. That's how into it I really was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much you have to leave behind as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So much you have to leave behind.
Yeah.
And, even some of the stuff you see on movies, right, like Jason Bourne and stuff like that. I know that's the absolute extreme end, but even, I am sure, maybe not in the Australian sector, but definitely in, like, the Chinese, Russian, American, European sectors as well. There would have to be cover stories of guys, potentially dying in combat for their country, but they didn't die. They just went off to a spy agency or something like that.
That's right. Yeah.
You look at the CIA, for example, right? Whenever someone dies as a spy in the CIA, they just get a star on the wall.
Yeah.
Like, if that doesn't tell you that America is over in every country in the world, because their CIA agents cannot say where they died, how they died, and who they are that died. It just tells you that they could be anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah, and they could probably still alive and still working, and that's why they were saying that.
Yeah, exactly right as well. Like that star couldn't even be a star. It might not even be a star.
No, nothing's as it seems in this world.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I've always been fascinated with Langley, the CIA, and their star formation, how they do it. Yeah, whenever anyone does die there, they put that star up on the wall, but there's just no information behind it. Yeah. And I've always said to myself as well, whenever I have this conversation with friends, I'm like, you just got to understand that, some of these movies that come out, yes, it is all, it's a lot of it is fake. It's Hollywood, but there are people in those roles all around the world.
Yeah.
And you just have to look at the stars on the wall and know that business to know that, man, America is everywhere and anywhere, and they've got people littered everywhere, just like the Chinese would have it, the Russians would have it, the English, Europeans, everywhere.
Yeah. Some of the jobs that I've been on, I remember with one of the guys I was working on, we just sat there and pinched ourselves, and I said, seriously, people actually would not believe this. We actually do this stuff. We sort of likened it to a bit of a cross between Catch Me If You Can and a James Bond extreme movie, and I'm just going, no, this is actually for real. Like, the money that they would spend to get the results was there. I mean, the money did not matter. You could be spending endless amounts of money, and that did not matter. They just wanted a result. But the stuff that they would let you do or that you could do, yeah, mind blowing. I still pinch myself.
Yeah, right. That sounds so interesting. What about like women in the industry, right? Because, you know, for like exactly like the case you were talking about before with Peter Foster, right? You were going around, walking around. Imagine if that was a tall guy, clean shaven, looked like he was police or looked like he was in the military, rather than getting a lady up there.
Yeah.
Do you think that in some way, shape or form, you being female can benefit you in so many ways?
Do you know what? I don't actually think so, because, you know, I remember when I got my license and the girl that I was working with, she said, "You're going to stand out." I said, "I'll use it to my advantage."
Yeah.
So I don't think that there's any such thing. It's like there's no ideal car. You will stand out or not stand out however you allow. It's like when the police come past and you quickly put your seatbelt on, are you going to make yourself look like you stand out because you're drawing attention to yourself? You just got to learn to blend in, and you've got to learn to be able to be adaptable and read the play and change. And sometimes being completely in someone's face and being overt is actually better than being covert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a good friend explain it to me one time as well, because it's when they first started working with females in the military in these type of roles, and they were like, "Sam, what does stand out to you more if two people were sitting in a car, two guys that are sitting there, or a guy and a girl just laughing and talking to each other?"
Yeah.
It's like that is so much more covert than the two guys sitting in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and when he explained it to me like that, it's like, man, it's just opened up such a world of different people. Like, you look at it as in like the James Bond type stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's just always guys.
Yeah, true.
And it's always guys, but it's not, because sometimes females can, I think females can just get into situations more than...
Well, we can get away with being in a park where there's children and things, but then there's, you know, if you talk about a work site, okay, there are women on there, but you're probably going to fit in better than I am on a work site. So everything has its pros and cons. I do remember this one job, I was working with this guy, and we'd been hired because the client was... how do I explain this? The client was concerned that his 94-year-old mum was about to give all his money away to someone who'd literally just moved in, and he was only 30. And of course, this guy was just after her money. So they were just looking for any dirt on this guy and trying to find, well, where are they going to the lawyers that he's signing off on this sort of stuff. So we're sitting there one night, and I was working in a car with a guy, and we're sitting in a van up on this hill just watching. And next minute, the vehicle pulled out of the driveway, and they started coming up the hill right to where we were. So, of course, we had to make it look like we were a couple. So, although we weren't kissing, you're sort of grabbing each other. Of course, you probably wouldn't want to do that. It's another guy. And then after that, we needed to get some footage when they came back up the driveway. And we knew they were going to come back up and then up the hill. And so we needed to come up with an idea of how we could drive really slowly towards them at the same time they were driving up towards us. So while they're in the house, I went and did a bit of bin scabbing and through the paper bins, and just got all these papers. I put them with rubber bands so that as they were coming up, I could make it look like I was a paper thrower. So I was just driving really slow, looked like I was throwing papers into driveways. Yeah, but my partner was just sitting in the back and just taking film. But it gave us the reason to be driving slowly, because why else do you drive slowly? Because we needed the headlights on. So it's coming up with these ideas of how can you do this.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
You just got to come up with what's in the moment. But yeah, look, I think...
You have to be able to think on your feet as well, right? You have to be able to be like a real quick thinker.
Yeah, he's like, what are you doing in bins?
Solver.
Like, just you wait, mate.
Yeah.
This is going to pay off. We're going to get the footage. He couldn't understand what I was in bins for. But yeah, there are females. I don't actually know other people who really do what I do, because I guess it's a fairly quiet world, and it's something that you clearly don't advertise. But yes, I'm licensed Australia-wide, which I don't know that there'd be too many people licensed Australia-wide. You normally stick to your own state, but that gives me the ability to have quite a wide range of clients for the high-end jobs.
So there's only state licenses, is there?
Yeah, that's just all about making money, isn't it?
Yeah, and then so you've got a license to work everywhere in Australia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how in demand were you, or are you now?
Yeah, look, there's endless work. I think once you've got a good name in both factual and surveillance, there's endless work. And the good thing about that is you get to pick it. In terms of things like the really high-end jobs in the UC, you can't be on, you can't be on those constantly. They take quite a toll. So even that one that I said went for over 3 years, in that 3 years I only did one other job for a short couple of months stint on top of that, because you've just got too much going on. You can't be keeping all these stories and keep your own life going.
Yeah. So I want to know a bit when you're living in that world as well, with like you'd have to have like black phones or whatever you call it. When we sat down to chat about this as well, you were talking about if you were to buy something from somewhere, you have to make sure you rip the tags off so they can't go back there and then get the surveillance. So just explain to me, like, how you have to sort of cover your tracks like that. How important is it?
Yeah, so when it comes to undercover stuff, look, I guess there's a degree of, am I just being paranoid, or am I covering my tracks? But at the end of the day, we understand how it is when we locate information out of someone, so we make sure we cover our tracks even more than that. So that might be as much as if you've purchased something and I'm going to be sitting somewhere with my target, I've got to make sure that, say it's a car, I've got to make sure there's not a Hertz sticker on there. I don't want them to see the company that I'm hiring this from if they think that this car is my personal car. Or removing things, like you said, stickers from something so that they can't see it come from a chemist and go back and somehow ask for the footage or who was it that purchased that. So everything you're doing with the phones, you're making sure it's not essentially to your name and all of those things. Obviously everything we do has to be legal and above board, but we have to make sure that nothing is traceable, so if the target does become suspect on you, they're not going to come back on you.
Yeah.
Especially for the high-end jobs that we're talking are really important, that they don't come back at you, because the reality is there's people out there that would happily have me knocked off if they knew who I was.
Yeah, because how heavy some of the jobs you've done. Does that ever worry you?
It should.
Like doing a podcast like this now?
No. I've always been very private, and got to a point where sometimes I think the paranoia can set in, and you've got to get to a point where you go, I know I'm safe at whatever level I put in. So, we've obviously blurred out my name and my face, and even up until now, I've really been very careful on social media. But I've started a page that we can use, for this, to mention me in this podcast. But other than that, I am very careful, and that will still never mention my name or any of those other things. So yeah, I guess there is that level of awareness, but I've also got to a point of just going, I've got to live life. Like, you can't actually live always paranoid about who's behind you.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying, but if I was in those type of jobs for that many years, like is there certain parts of Australia where you won't go travel to because you know that you've done a job there for that long and you could be recognised in that area?
Probably not in Australia, but overseas, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that would be scary, especially overseas as well. Like, there's no Australian police, or there's no one to help you. Like,
there's no forgiveness there.
You're on your own.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could get some concrete boots for sure.
You're very right.
Yeah, I mean, that's especially that world as well. I'm a really, really big reader on global affairs and that type of stuff, and I'm really into for example, some of my friends that go over and do some of these jobs, liberating kids and stuff like that, and I sit down and talk to them, and some of the stories absolutely blow your mind of what people get away with overseas.
Yeah.
And look, it happens a little bit in Australia, but not to the extent of like how severe and how absolute some of the stuff that's happening over there to kids, and you just think it blows your mind that much that you think it cannot be real.
Yeah.
And people can't do stuff to kids like that overseas, but they do.
Absolutely.
So when you say that there's certain parts of the world that you don't want to go in, it's just it can be completely unforgiving.
Yeah, very much. And I thought I was exposed to a level of, I guess, corruption and crime when I was in the police, but nothing like I've been exposed to now. And when it comes to the elites or money, there's no end to how corrupt it is out there. It's actually mind-blowing.
Yeah. Can you talk about any of that stuff or no?
Maybe not yet.
No, okay. Maybe I have to get you on for another episode when you're ready.
I think that might be the go.
Yeah.
We'll get back to Peter Foster, hey?
Yeah.
At least he's known.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's jump back onto him then. So what was so you obviously helped, get him. They tackled him on the beach. So how long were you up there for?
Yeah, so for about 2 months, I was on and off. This was during COVID, so it was pretty difficult to travel at that time, but I was lucky enough to get an exemption to go up there for this particular case because he was going to escape. So just to explain the difference, like police deal with criminal and investigations, and we deal with civil. So generally police and private investigators don't actually cross paths. We're normally in two very separate camps. But when it comes to things like fraud, for example, on this case, the client themselves who had their money stolen from them, who had tried to take this to police, were not getting anywhere, and understandably because there was not really a jurisdiction. It was the money went through Queensland and New South Wales, and the person was overseas, so whose jurisdiction is it? So they didn't really want to take it on, or they couldn't take it on. It wasn't really in their jurisdiction. So when a client went to Ken Gamble, he then puts it together going, well, we essentially do the locate and find this person and have the brief together, and that's what Ken Gamble and his team do. They do that on that end, and then from my end, my job was to actually go up and locate him. So once I got up there and located him, my job from there was to really sit on him every single day and get his pattern of life. Where does he going? What's he doing? When's he about to do this runner? Who's his friends? Who's he using to assist him? And so just sitting there and getting footage, which most days was on the beach every morning where he wears the same clothes every time, as you'll see in the footage. Just walks his dogs and that was about it. But I was able to get close enough that I could spend a lot of time with him that he didn't know I was actually spending with him.
Yeah. Did you ever chat to him? Like, do you ever get that close to have a conversation with him?
I was really close to him, but I never did. The thing is with Peter, even though he dated Sam Fox in his early days and it made it look like he was, this womanizer, he actually had no desire for women. He doesn't look at women. He's so into his scams that he's doing that you could sit right under his nose, wearing a bikini. He would have no idea. So, although I was...
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, no care at all. He was not really aware. He thought he was home and hosed where he was, and he didn't really have an awareness anyway. Not that he was ever really going to notice me. I mean, all the footage looks really close. Like you'll see sometimes with footage, it really jumps up and down. But the camera I'm holding, you're looking about a kilometre away.
I read that you had an 80 times zoom on it.
Yeah, it's a pretty good camera.
Yeah.
You can run, you can't hide.
Yeah, that's right.
So, getting that pattern of life. And at one point, he was about to move into another a separate accommodation, a different one. It would have been for him, would have been ideal. He had all cameras and gates, and we would have been really struggling to get his pattern of life and actually orchestrate the arrest. So then when I found out about that and did some digging and found out who was actually going to get this house through, I rang them up and posed as someone else because I couldn't tell them, and posed as someone else, essentially saying I would pay a lot more for this rental and could they give me a week. So at that point I knew we only had a week with the police, and they were saying, we can't get up, it's COVID. I said, come on, we've only got a week, otherwise this whole pattern of life that we've formed and the safety net of knowing that we can get him arrested was expiring. So I think it was literally on the 6th day that we ended up having the police come up.
Yeah, and that was where they ran up and they got the footage of him tackling him.
Yeah, so we had a briefing the night before, which they let me give the briefing, being an ex-police officer, and I know they wouldn't normally having private investigators involved, but they let me do that briefing. And the funny thing is we were sitting around and had this briefing, and the next morning the cops dropped me to the beach, and I was sitting there just waiting to call it all in. And then once he was on the beach, I called it in, and they come running in, as you see in the footage, and do this amazing crash tackle. Now, just on that, so many viewers and comments have been, why on earth, like that was an overkill, why would you do that? But they don't understand what I know from the background on the briefing. And Peter's got a pretty bad history of either running or trying to get a gun off the police, and knowing what he had in his house, we were never going to do the arrest at his house.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it was that simple. So we needed to do the arrest from there when he was off guard. And obviously without giving away too much in terms of what that was, it was it was done for a reason. We had to do it that way.
Yeah.
And even his phone that you can see in the footage, it looks like he's really struggling with his phone. I mean, he had information on his phone he didn't want, so he would have thrown that straight out into the water with the Crocs.
Yeah.
You know, he's smart like that. So, and then the funny thing is, after we had done the arrest, one of the cops, I was walking alongside them in my wig and everything, and one of the cops said to one of the other cops, "Who on earth's that chick following us?" And he's like, "You know that's Agent X, don't you? She did our briefing last night." So that goes to show that when you're wearing a bit of disguise, that even they didn't realise who it was, and they knew I was going to be there.
Yeah, nice. After that job, because that guy has obviously, he's put hits out on people, and you were known as Agent X.
Yeah.
Did you ever think to yourself that this guy has, he has some of the things at his dispense to be able to track you down?
I'm sure he would, but that one hasn't worried me in comparison to other jobs that I've had.
Yeah.
And, let him try.
Yeah.
I've got plenty of good people around me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he just has to come back to this podcast and ask some questions, but don't worry. I won't
Thanks,
give you
Sam.
up.
You got my back.
Yeah, that's right. Look, let's just start diving onto some of the personal stuff now, right? Because I did, we had this conversation before as well about, are you done with undercover work and not so much private investigator stuff, right? Because you can, like you said, you can still do that from your laptop, or
That's right.
you can do that without being seen. So it doesn't really, you don't really need to make any decisions on that because you can continue working that area. But that undercover stuff, like, is there a part that still draws you to it and you still want to stay in that
When
world?
you asked me, I wasn't able to answer it, so I think I answered myself in not answering. It means that I'm not done, and I can guarantee if someone rang me up tomorrow and said, "Here's the job and here's what it is," you'll see me on a plane pretty quickly. But I guess for most private investigators, their identity don't really matter. If you're doing factual surveillance, if you're following someone around with a camera, they're not going to really remember from some podcast. But doing undercover work is where you really got to be careful, because the other people with money and things at the other end, and they want to find out who you are. So the fact that I'm not ready to reveal my identity, I guess, tells me I'm not done yet. It's too much adrenaline, Sam. It's too fun.
Yeah. What about the people around you? Does that worry them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So it's more so it's not really it's not the money, it's not nothing.
No.
It's just the adrenaline of a job.
No, I mean, I've had jobs where they've offered really big money and I've just asked about it and I've said, no, not doing it, because my integrity didn't feel right, or it's not for the right reasons. A bit like cheating partners. I rarely do those jobs, but if I do, it's because I feel there's kids involved and there's a reason that I think it would benefit someone, because most of the time it's just someone who's just pissed off with their ex and they just want to get some information. You know what? I'm not getting caught up in your saga. Go sort it yourself.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Are you allowed to talk to me about the money stage of it? Like, and I do want you to be a bit private on it, but like on some of the higher end jobs, are we talking, you could be undercover for 3 months, like hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars or something like that?
We're talking decent money for decent jobs.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. And sometimes there can be bonuses for things.
Yeah.
But I can honestly say I would still do the work that I do every day and get paid the same, and I'd still do that job.
Yeah.
Because it's the adrenaline. I mean, there's got to be danger money in things. There just has to be. Otherwise, I got taught once by someone I was working for. He asked me to give a price of what I wanted. I said, no, you tell me. And he said, this is an industry that you've got to value yourself, and there's very few people like yourself out there, so value yourself. And I really appreciated that, because I have ever since. And now when jobs come in, I just put my price on. This is what it is, and I'm not here to bargain.
Yeah.
Either you want me to do the job or you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a interesting point you made before where it doesn't really matter what price it is. If it's a good job, it's a good job. Yeah, I remember, and speak to any of my mates like this as well, that we were overseas with. A lot of us would have went over for free.
Yeah.
Because it was fun. Like I was explaining before on the podcast, it's fun. It's adrenaline pumping. It's like for young men, it's really, I was getting a skin cancer check the other day. just my annually check, and like the lady was asking me a few questions, and she said, have you been outside, or like, have you only got Australian sun? I'm like, I did a bit of time in Afghan and stuff like that. And she's like, oh yeah, what were you there for? I was in the army. And she's like, oh yeah, like during the war. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, oh, like almost felt sorry for me. And I'm like, lady, it was the best time of my life.
Yeah.
Like, don't feel sorry for me.
No way.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've had some shit times over there, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And being in the military was great. I tell people all the time, I got to jump out of planes for work, which was great. So I understand that like adrenaline side to it as well, because there was also a part of it where you just walked around the desert with a loaded weapon. Anything could happen. You'd have to trust your instincts. Yeah,
massively.
Really
and trust your brothers.
Yeah.
And, who you're working with.
Yeah, exactly right. So I understand that. I do. But now there's a big part of me which is just like, yeah, nah, fuck that. I'd like, I'm age of 34. I've got some important things happening in my life, and I'm
a tad older and I still haven't matured yet, Sam.
Yeah. Well, even look, like there's even guys that have went over my position, a little bit younger, went over and fought in Ukraine, for a whole bunch of things and a whole bunch of reasons. But I had a guy on here as well. His name's Willie Beating Cancer. He's ex-military guy, Australian Army, and he a couple of episodes ago, he found out that he had cancer, and like in between his chemo treatments, he's flying over and reporting on the front line in Ukraine, because he's like, well, if I'm dying, I'm going to go over and report what I love to do. So he did that, and he was saying that he ran into a whole bunch of Australian guys over there that are fighting over there, and most of them are just over there for the thrill of it. It's not because they like Ukraine or hate Russia. It's just because they're war dogs.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And I'll have this conversation with friends of mine as well. Like, what would you go back to war for? And there's only two reasons that I would go back to war.
Yeah.
One is if Australia was getting attacked, like actually getting attacked.
Yeah,
Say if there was a world war and like we were under threat, and if we didn't fight, then a foreign invading force, China, could come over. What would happen to my family in Adelaide then?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, what would their life be like under a different type of rule sets?
Yeah.
Not under the current government. So that's one reason. And then another reason, if everyone was like, we need volunteers to go destroy the child sex trafficking industry, I'd put my hand up and go for free.
Absolutely.
I'd go for free. And I've always wondered as well, like you get to some of the numbers of it, it's absolutely wild. Like 5 million children around the year are trafficked per year. Like America is the top consumer of child pornography.
Yeah, wow.
Which is fucking crazy.
Oh,
it's disgusting.
Yeah.
During the Biden-Harris administration, 300,000 kids were trafficked across the border, and they don't know where they are. So there's just 300 kids missing in it's just something I'm very passionate about, because and we spoke about this before as well. And maybe if you do come back on the podcast, you can talk about some of the stuff we spoke about. But like I have a lot of friends that were over in the military, seen a lot heavier stuff than I did, and mates dying around them and stuff like that. But it's the stuff that happen to kids, the stuff they see into kids is the stuff that has stuck with them. I guess that's where it comes from a bit.
Absolutely.
But that's one thing where I would definitely go and sacrifice or my time and potentially my life for to stop that industry.
I think that's something that's probably within a lot of us, especially that went into this type of work. And even though our line of work was different, it's similar in the fact of we were happy to fight to get a result and put ourselves in some pretty bad situations. But we're the type of people who are very protective, and especially for kids, because kids cannot protect themselves. So someone's got to be able to stand up. Some people don't have the balls to do that. They really don't. They can just watch things under their nose, whereas we're not that type of person.
Yeah. There's a really interesting guy in Adelaide at the moment. I spoke to him today. He's a lawyer, and he's starting to call the government out on child sexual abuse cases. Like I think something like every second or third day, the amount of child sexual abuse cases going through the court system is like 40 to 50%.
Far out.
Yeah, so he's starting to call it out, which is cool. So, and I'm trying to get on the podcast. I had a chat with him before, and he was like, "Yeah, he's done a couple." So, I think he's going to come on. But he's really, really interesting. And yeah, the crazy thing is that, you know, like I think they were saying like 180 cases went through the court system on a few days ago, and 45% of them were to do with child.
That's huge, isn't it?
Which is wild, because, you know, you just don't think that happens in like a first world country like Australia.
That's right.
But like if you look at, you know, America, like those 300,000 kids, I don't know where they are. Australia, there's, you know, 190 cases up in front of the court system, and 45% of those to do with, you know, child abuse, child sexual abuse, should I say, which is, you know, different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly something that I want to keep working in that line, and I know you've mentioned some of your friends who won't come on are in that sort of line of work. So hook me up, I'll go over there with them.
Yeah, very
there's always a line of that my UC role comes in handy.
Yeah. That would you ever go? Would you ever do roles like that? And
of course I would. Yeah. Send me over.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I can't talk about them online, but they're super interesting. Super interesting, and it's just I try not to think about it too much, because it just gets me so angry to hear those type of things happening to kids all around the world. But
and that's the bonus of, you know, having people you know who are there for the right reasons to fight against that. And as much as I have this excitement in my voice saying send me over, the desire really is knowing the difference that you can make, and being able to leave that legacy of making change and leaving, you know, helping people.
Yeah. A lot of the guys in an industry, like I did a podcast with a mate on it, like the last half an hour, we spoke about it, and he's like, yeah, you're not doing it for the money.
No.
Like, there's no real great deal of money in it, and that's the issue, that there isn't money in it. And because a lot of these kids that get taken from poor families, so no one can really pay to track them down. And you know, one of the stats he said is there's only like 5,000 agents across the world, the whole world, are actually in the Department of Child Sex Trafficking. That's like America, France, Australia, everywhere. Yeah. So for the 5 million kids that are trafficked around the world each year,
it's spread pretty thin.
5,000 agents.
Yeah.
So it should almost be like the world's primary focus, I think.
It should be.
Yeah.
But it's sadly not.
Yeah, too many people arguing about oil prices and this fucking tariff and this trade war and
who can dance better on TikTok?
Yeah. Well, not. So actually, no. America, Trump just unbanned it. So they did a ban over there on it, and then Trump unbanned it.
That was just a media ploy, wasn't it? So they could get more people on TikTok.
Yeah, something like that. Hey, I asked this question to a lot of my mates because they were in the military, but it revolves around PTSD. So, like, do you think, you know, that you live with that?
I certainly know that I've touched in that area when I've come back on some one specific heavy job. I've certainly hit that area, and that was that story I was sharing where I'd spoken to a friend of mine who's ex-military, and, you know, told him how I was feeling, and he said, it's, you know, you're the problem, not them. I definitely had sort of gone into that world, but I think once I had that awareness that that's where I was, for me, I was able to really touch back on the personal development and things that I had done in that area to really pull myself back into that. And that is what I use a lot, even, you know, now with things that I do, whether it's in personal life or in jobs that I do, to really get myself back into the right frame, so that I don't go down that spiral of whether it's PTSD or anxiety or, you know, starting to become paranoid as you can in this role. Yeah, even stuff like has there ever been times where you're just driving around and a car might be, you know, because like I remember one, like, you know, like you just drive and you're like, geez, that car's been behind me for like the last 10 minutes, and all of a sudden you turn a road and they keep going straight. Not that anyone's ever following me, but you know, you do get it sometimes where people just take the same turns as you, and you're like, that car's been with me for 15 minutes. Does that ever get you like in a paranoid sense? Look, if I'm doing a job that I thought it was of a concern, I'll certainly have an awareness. But the reality is, if there was a big enough job on me, you wouldn't know someone's following you, because they don't just use one car, they don't just use, one person on foot. So you're actually not going to know. So it comes back down to just trusting my gut.
Yeah.
Trying to drop that paranoia off, because whatever I start feeling, I pass on to everyone around me, family-wise, and I don't want to do that to them.
Are you ever worried about passing on this trauma to, kids or people like that around you?
Yeah, definitely. So I've got kids, and the whole reason I really got stuck into personal development, and I know that, some of your past podcasts, you've had like Jade Toop on there talking about that sort of thing, and that really resonated with me. So I've done work through Real Education. I went to Real Woman, probably over 10 years ago now, and that was a massive life changer. And what I realised through that education was that we do pass on trauma massively, whether it's from in utero or when they're growing up, in that 0 to 7 years that he talked about. But even beyond that, like the way that I live my life and how I'm feeling absolutely has an impact on them. So this is why I'm so clear on making sure how I live my life, that I'm being, mirroring that to them and being that example. And if I can teach them how to go through, issues at school, or whether it's in the workforce or wherever it is with friends, then that's a really big bonus and something that they can take forward. So how I display myself and how I process things is really important, so I don't pass on that trauma, and also so they don't take on my stuff.
Yeah. Do they know the line of work that you're in?
Yeah, they're always at me asking me to share stories, and I've always been fairly hesitant. Even like family, I said yesterday I was going to come on your podcast, and a family member said, "Oh, that's awesome, because we'll finally get to hear some things, because you play everything down."
Yeah. Well, still, they still can't get, most of it.
No, that's true.
They can still only get a bit of it.
Something's better than nothing, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Have you ever been real personal with that since you've been in this line of work?
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I was talking to you the first time, I sort of clam it up a bit. I find it hard to actually say some things, and it's not because, I'm shy. I'm quite a confident person, and not because in anything in terms of, trauma or emotions like that. It's just that I find it hard to speak about something that I've been so private about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You talk about that like 0 to 7 years. Jay Toop said it perfectly, and I didn't really understand it until I sat down and chatted to him about it. It's like with him as well, like he's been through all this stuff. I swear he knows more than, personal development than most psychiatrists or psychologists do. It was absolutely amazing to hear him speak and talk about the situation and where he's been and what he's done. But like your formative years when you're 1 to 7 is like when you brain is just developing, it's soaking in all this stuff. And if you're taking in all this information and seeing all this stuff which is detrimental to, the parents' lives, if they're, drinking, excessive drinkers, if they're, smoking, if they're arguing, if they're, frustrating, if they're letting their frustrations pour out in front of kids, all this stuff is just getting like soaked in by babies, right? Because and toddlers, and then as they get to 5 and 6 and stuff like that, because their brain is just actively learning. Yeah, it's like learning how to be a person. So like you get a lot of your, formative responses, who you are as a person, developed in that 0 to 7 years. And with a lot of my military mates, like I was one of the ones that weren't like that, because I came from a pretty good upbringing with a pretty good family. But a lot of my military mates in the ages of 0 to 7, they've watching their dad beat up their mum, or they're watching their mum shoot up or something like that, or massive alcoholism or drug use around there. So I've been around a lot of guys with that childhood trauma stage of things. I guess that really attracted my job in the military. Like a lot of guys went to that type of role because it was that tough, hard environment that they grew up in, sort of thing. So it just echoed into the military.
Apparently it's 7 generations that we can carry trauma for, and I really believe that that's, the more personal development and work that I've done in that area and helping process people through, and the things that you see, it's like, this is profound stuff. It's a reality. We carry it. I remember one specific story when my daughter, when I was 20 weeks pregnant with her, I had a car accident. I was on the freeway and I started to lose control. The water had gone across the freeway, and so we started, snaking. And I remember thinking to myself, my whole life went through my mind. My then husband was asleep in the passenger and I was pregnant. And I remember thinking, my life's gone. And so I literally prayed out loud, God, saying, God, I'm not ready to die yet. I don't want to kill my husband and, yet to be born baby. And, the accident was quite bad. It was a write-off and we were only saved by the fact there was a railing. Now, I was only pregnant at that stage. When my daughter was 4, I took her to where there was some flooding across the road. Now, I'd never told her this story about the accident. So she's sitting in the back seat and we pulled up to where there was flooding going across the road. And I pulled up and I said, hey, this is what it's like. And I went to finish my sentence and she screamed out, she said, leave. And then she starts praying, God, don't let us die yet. I'm not ready to die.
Really? Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. And I mean, she's done that so many times, and I've had that in other areas and dreams and things where we have the same dream about something with a family member dying and things we've said, and it's stuff we carry. It's a reality, and unless we do the work to really help move that trauma or process things, we're walking around wounded.
Yeah, like even going back to the thing before that you said, right, with her being able to like recall that moment. It's a similar, I read a study the other day, and I read a whole bunch of studies, but with pregnant women and if they have barking dogs, right? Like, and if their dogs bark and whilst the woman is pregnant, then, when they're in their cot and stuff like that, they won't really wake up to barking dogs because they've been around it so much in the womb. So it's just like one of those things, if their environment they're in,
conditioned to it.
Yeah, their womb they're already conditioned to it. And then they come out and then they don't wake up to barking noises or anything like that.
Yeah, wow.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, yep.
I mean, there's so much study and science going on. I read a lot of stuff. Even one the other day, they were saying dad bod is actually a real thing, right? Because when the wife is pregnant, she gives off this, it's just like...
Some hormones
some
like everything else they give off.
Yeah, that's right. Some hormones, but then it makes the male tireder, and then it helps him put on weight. So then when the non-sleep phase comes, the male actually has fat that it can store, that it can work off, so it doesn't have to eat, so it can take care of the baby whilst the...
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so obviously that happened back in the Stone Age.
Far out.
Really interesting stuff. I mean, I read a whole bunch of this stuff. And look, studies are studies, right? They're like, some of them might be true and some of them might be real false accusations, stuff like that. But yeah, I just find it really interesting reading that sort of stuff. Yeah. Absolutely love it.
Absolutely.
Look, let's start wrapping this up. I do want to have you back on, but I think you need to be ready to dive into some of those stories. So
I think you're
we'll definitely keep that open-ended. But if you could just give your 18-year-old self one bit of advice about life, what would it be? It
would definitely be about personal development and dealing with those traumas. When you're growing up until you say 18, I feel that in a way almost like a jellyfish. You're controlled by whoever, the roof you're living under, what you will do, what you won't wear, the money that you've made up until that time. So up until that time, you've not really had the ability to have your own voice. And then you've brought on all those traumas and all those other things that we've discussed. So if I could tell myself at 18 to go and do some work, and whether it's breath work, whether it's going and doing seminars and involving myself in those sorts of people and getting rid of some of that baggage, I tell you what, that's absolutely what I'd do.
Yeah, that's a good bit of advice. I mean, like if you ask someone like for example J2, right? He would he said one of the best answers that anyone's ever said. He just said, "I'll just go give myself a hug," and that's it.
Right.
I
that
wouldn't.
Was beautiful.
Yeah, he goes, "I wouldn't,"
because he needed a hug.
Yeah, he's like,
bless him.
I just never had that in my life, and that was one of the things that he said with his younger boy as well. He's like, I'm very, very aware that I need to be able to do that in my life, and it's. Not really. I'm sure it's for him, but a lot of it would be for his kid as well, to make sure he doesn't pass on the traumas that he got from his family and so on and so on.
Yeah, what a legend.
Yeah, it was cool. But look, Agent X, thanks very much for jumping on to Odds Collide podcast.
Thank you for having me, Sam.
You're welcome.
See you next time.
Definitely. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And for more information, head over to our Instagram at 2 Worlds Collide Podcast. Take care.